Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending where you are in the world. Welcome everyone to our session today. I hope you're ready to learn a bunch more about AI, about Azure, and how we can do that with .NET. We're going to be covering off a bunch of different stuff today. We're going to be going through one of our Learn modules on the Microsoft Learn environment to teach you how to keep going on your journey that you're having as you learning more about this AI development and how you're going to be able to get that award at the end of this series that we've been running here. My name's Aaron Powell. I'm a Principal Cloud Advocate on the .NET on Azure advocacy team here at Microsoft. And I'm joined here with my colleague, Justin. Justin, do you want to introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Justin, and with the same team with Aaron. And today we are going to run the Azure OpenAI service with the RAG pattern. So I'm going to be so excited to share this information with you, and I hope you do so.
All right, let's kick this session off. Whoops. I forgot that we've got a producer backstage that's bringing screens up for us, and I clicked the button. We just discussed that they were doing that for us, so you can tell that this is being done live. But yes, as Justin said, we're going to be talking about the RAG pattern with Azure OpenAI Service. RAG standing for Retrieval Augmented Generation pattern. It's an approach to helping enrich our large language models, our LLMs, with additional data to make it a bit more contextual about what we're doing. But we've been running a series over the last week or so around getting started with .NET and AI. If you want to go back and catch any of the sessions that you've missed in the past, you can get to those on our YouTube channel via the links there on screen. And remember, at the end of this, if you complete the challenge and take the assessment, there's a virtual certificate that you can get for all of the hard work that you've gone through. The previous sessions, that's the list of them. You see there's been a couple beforehand that kind of, each of them sort of build on this knowledge that we'll be touching on today, but they're also in conjunction with our Learn modules that we've got. We've got one more session coming up in a couple of days' time. Now, those times and dates are US-centric, so if you are, like Justin and myself, not in the US, just make sure you translate those into your local time and local day of the week. So what are we going to be doing today, Justin? Do you want to tell our audience a bit more about the module that we're going to be covering off?
Sure. So when you visit that website, aka.ms/genai RAG module, then you will be able to see the Microsoft Learn module screen. So if I'm going to share my screen, could you please do that, Matt? Okay, so here we go. So this is the Microsoft Learn module of what we are going to walk through today. So that's a Retrieval Augmented Generation pattern with Azure OpenAI service. So it takes about half an hour, so you can easily follow the information with a few the exercises. So this will be really a great example for us. So what we are going to do today, so this is the Microsoft Learn module. So if we go to the next slide, then Aaron, so what is RAG?
Sorry, I put myself on mute. There was we had a bit of noise in the background. So if we think about it, and we'll go through this in a demo in a moment, we can kind of see the workflow that you might go through. But when we're talking about working with large language models, well, they've been trained on a whole bunch of information. That's what makes them work the way that they work. But that information is not really contextualized around your business problems or your business's specific bits of information. And that can result in, well, the models, when we get it to do completions for us, well, they're just going to give us answers based off of what they've been trained on. But how do I make sure that I give it answers that are accurate and consistent with the sorts of things that I want the users of my system to know about? Well, this is where the Retrieval Augmented Generation pattern comes in. So rather than trying to then build our own large language models that are just embedded with our organizational knowledge, that's costly, that's time consuming to produce, and then we have something that we have to keep maintaining. Well, instead, when we send up a prompt, the question from the user to our large language model, well, we can attach some additional contextualized information. We might go out to a database and pull back, potential product records and product information relative to the query that they've asked, and then have the large language model use that in producing its outcomes rather than having it just try and fabricate up something. Or, as we're going to see through this Learn module and through the demos that Justin and I are going to tackle shortly, we can leverage something like Azure AI Search to be more of a complex search indexer that sits behind this. And we can bring in, say, PDFs, Word documents, and stuff like that, not just structured data inside of a database.
I have a question about that.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Yeah. People say, usually people say, the differences, they wanted to know the differences between the fine tuning and RAG. So what are they?
Yeah, so it's a good one, and it's a question that you're going to end up asking yourself as you try and build out a system that might be using some of these technologies. So when we're doing a fine-tuned model, this is where we're taking an existing model. Let's say something like a GPT model from OpenAI, and then we're going to create our own customized version on top of that. We're going to then provide it with that information, and we're going to retrain that model so that it knows about the stuff that's contextually relevant to our business or to what our customers' needs are. Now, that can be a good way to embed that knowledge inside of that large language model that we're working with. But the downside of that is that we've now created a new static point in time. So what happens if we've trained it on a product database and we've added some more products, or we've deprecated some products, or a product description we want to update? Well, then we have to retrain that model to tune it again based off that new information. RAG, on the other hand, instead of training the model, we're going to provide it with that information at the point in time where we're asking it to do a completion. So it's not the same as training, but it's embedding additional information, additional contextual knowledge to the request that's going to the model, and then the completion that it's producing can use that information we've given it to give the result. This means that we don't have to take anything other than a base model. Like I said, like a GPT-3.5 model or a GPT-4o model or something that we can get out of Azure OpenAI service. And we just use that as though it is that same base model, and we just provide additional point-in-time knowledge as we're making those requests. This means that we're not doing any additional training of the model, but we do get the values that that represents. Now, there are pros and cons that are of which one you should use and like when you would use for different scenarios, and they're kind of beyond the scope of what we've got time to cover off here. We could use the entire hour to talk about just the differences and use cases of fine-tuning versus RAG, but at least that should give you a starting point on making that decision yourselves and testing out which is going to be the right one for the problems that you're working with.
Thanks, Aaron, for the explanation.
So the basic steps that we have when it comes to working with RAG is, well, we start with the prompt that's come from the user. So this is the question that they've asked, the thing that you want them to get the answer from our LLM for. We're then going to do some processing of that. This might actually be asking a LLM to give us some insights onto their question to determine what might be relevant for the things that they're looking for. We don't want to upload an entire product database every single time the user is making a request. Let's say that they're wanting to know about a particular city, which is we're representing a travel company. Well, we don't want to upload every single possible city every single time they're making a request. We have a finite number of tokens that we can provide in an LLM request. So instead, we're going to find out, well, what's going to be the right city? Are they only wanting to know about London, for example? Then we'll find the information that we've tagged as relevant to London and attach that to the original prompt that the users provided, maybe some other contextual information around it for our system so that we can guide the model to give us the kinds of answers that we want to get back, and then send all of that up to Azure OpenAI service. And then the response will know about that additional information to get back to the user. Sounds simple, right?
Yeah, those 6 steps are usually the workflow of how we use a RAG pattern on the large language model.
Precisely. And like I said, it's just as simple as those 6 steps, and we'll show you in the
Okay.
demos in a moment just how easy it is to go.
Sure.
Speaking of, shall we
Right.
jump over to demos? I reckon
Sure.
let's get started.
Yep.
And before we actually dive into looking at how we can implement RAG with Azure OpenAI Service and Azure AI Search, I want to show you just why we would want to be using RAG in this kind of a situation. So what I've got here is I've got a Polyglot notebook. This is an extension for VS Code. If you haven't used it, I recommend go checking it out. It's a great way to create these little scripts that you can check into source control of just like steps that you want to execute. I use it a lot for prototyping, particularly when I'm doing some of this AI stuff, because it means I don't have to spin up whole console applications or anything like that. I can just execute a bunch of sequential steps. The first thing I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to get the NuGet package for Azure OpenAI Service. So I'm just going to require that in here. I'm going to use the pre-release package, so the version 2 NuGet package, which is in pre-release. So we'll just execute that step, which is going to download that package from NuGet. See, there we go. That package is installed. And then I can add some using statements. So I'm going to need the .NET Interactive, just so that we can do a few things in a moment. I also want the Azure OpenAI namespace and the OpenAI chat namespace. So I'll bring those in. And now I need to get some information from me as the user about how do I connect to my OpenAI service. So what's the OpenAI endpoint? What's the key that we're going to be accessing? And then I'm going to create an Azure OpenAI client using that endpoint and that key. And then I'm going to get the deployment name within inside of Azure OpenAI that we're going to be working with. So let's get our key, and I'll copy that from my Azure portal. And then I'm going to need my endpoint. Copy that. And you'll see here that I've created a password for password key, password prompt inside of the Polyglot notebooks, so that, I didn't want to publish my OpenAI key for everyone that's watching online today, or anyone who's watching the recording later. And then the endpoint is just obviously a normal string. And now I need to get my deployment name. So I'll just come over to here and copy that one in. There it is. I can copy and paste. There we go. So for this, we're going to be using a GPT-3.5 Turbo 16K model. So it's this is a good fast model, and it's a good general purpose model. All right. So now that we've got our Azure OpenAI client, we can start working with that. But first, I need to find out what's the prompt that I want the user to complete. Well, as I said before, let's pretend that we're a travel agency. So we want to give contextual information about a city we might want to visit. So I'm going to ask it a question around, tell me about London. We're then going to create a chat client using that OpenAI deployment that I've provided, so the GPT-3.5 model. And then I'm going to ask the chat client to complete that chat, and I'm just giving it a user message. I haven't provided it with any grounding information. I haven't provided it with a system prompt or anything. I'm just saying, here is that message. Just give me a completion based off of that. So tell me about London. And now this is going to then send that up to our model. And because we haven't provided with any additional information, we've done no grounding, we've done no fine tuning of this model or anything like that. It is just going to tell us some generic information that the model knows about London. London is the capital of the largest city in England, in the United Kingdom, so on and so forth. And you can see it's given us some good general purpose knowledge about London, which is good. But I run a travel agency. I want people to know about things they can go and see, and I want to recommend them stuff that they can do through brochures that we have and through the information that we have within inside of our organizational knowledge base. So, Justin, how would we go about providing that knowledge here using Azure AI Search?
That's a really good question. So when Aaron uses the large language model as OpenAI, it returns the generic information based on their the training. So if we want to, as a travel agency, we want to provide a few more specific information. So let's change the screen, and I will show you how to do it in our Azure AI Search. So in here, I have a storage account, and there is a storage browser, and there is a container that I have uploaded a few files already. So there are PDF files about the cities, Dubai, Las Vegas, London, and so on. So these are all the information we provide for the search. Now, so I also have the AI search. So we have, and when we open up the AI search instance, and there is the menu called import and vectorize data. So vectorizing means it imports the data and it convert into the numbers so that the large language model can understand those kind of data. So there is there is one. Oh, here we go. So there is a storage account and there is the container. So I can just use it. So and I give the AI search of the data, source of data, and I will give the language model, which the large language model we can use. And also there is text embedding, the large language model. So then you can just click it and yeah, just click next. So which is really simple. And then now I'm going to give it a name with largest treble index. Then I will create it. So it takes up the time and to get them all, import all the data and vectorize it. So we have already provided all the information in the other instance, and with the information, Aaron will be improving our the capability of the AI search capability. So Aaron, are you ready?
Yep. So what's important to note about the data that Justin has just uploaded to AI search there through the Azure portal is that those were PDF documents that have been uploaded. So AI search is going to be extracting all of the text out of those PDFs, and then, as you mentioned, vectorizing them, which is essentially turning into large series of numbers that we can then perform searches against. And that's how that's a step in the RAG pipeline that we are going to go through. We're going to try and find things that are semantically similar based off of those numbers to the prompt that we've initially asked it for. And then once we're finding those, we can then attach that information into the overall prompt that we're sending up to the model to get our completion, and hopefully get some more contextually relevant information about London or any other cities that we could have also searched for there. And the result, like the fact that we've done that entirely through just uploading PDFs, like we haven't had to write a PDF parser or anything like that. We haven't even had to tell it the structure of the PDFs. We're able to use the power of Azure AI Search to just extract that because it understands how to work with PDFs. So let's go back to my screen and have a look at what we would change in the code now that we're wanting to work with the AI search as an additional component inside of our AI request pipeline. So I've got a new Polyglot notebook open here, and this one we'll go through the steps again. So I'm going to bring in that NuGet package. I'm going to bring in our using statements, and then I'm going to set up my OpenAI key and everything like that. Let's find my key. Whoops. Where's my mouse gone? There's my mouse. Paste in the key. Paste in our endpoint. And then paste in our deployment name. Okay. So I've got my my AI client all ready to go again. But because I want to connect it to that search index, I'm going to get some additional information from the user. So this is the kind of thing you might be pulling from Key Vault, or you might be using a managed identity to connect to in an actual production application. Obviously, I'm just running a little scripting notebook here. So this time, I want to get the endpoint for my Azure AI Search. I want to get the key to connect to Azure AI Search, and lastly, the index that Justin has just uploaded those documents in there, and the vectors are going to exist inside of. So let me go ahead and grab these. Where is my URL? There it is. Oops, got to click around. So we'll get our endpoint. We'll grab my key. And again, this one's a password so that you can't see it. And then lastly, we're going to grab our index. There we go. Okay. Now, the difference to when we were creating our chat request before is that we were not providing with any kind of options for the chat request. So this time I am going to create a new set of chat completion options, and I'm going to add to that options a data source, which is the Azure Search Chat data source. Now, there are a couple of different data sources that you can work with. So it understands databases and things like that. But I'm going to be working with Azure Search because, well, that's what we're working with here. And then I provide it with the endpoint, the index, and I'm telling it how to authenticate to that. Again, I'm using a key here, but you could be using a managed identity, which we'd be more likely to use in a production environment. Now, I will note that this is a preview feature that is within inside of the SDK. So it does produce a warning just to note that. So I'm just disabling that warning that it is a preview feature. Otherwise, it would bring up a whole bunch of like squigglies inside of here and warnings. And we want to hide those warnings where we are and where we can. So let's run that and we'll create our options there. Now, when it comes to our and getting the completion back, well, again, this is very similar to what we originally had. We're going to get the input from the user. We're going to create our chat client using the particular deployment that we specified, and we're going to get we're going to ask that client to complete the chat. We're giving it a user message, which is the text, but we're providing those options as a second argument to the chat to the complete chat request that we're doing. And let's just output what we get this time. So we'll execute that and say, tell me about London. Now this time, remember, we've provided those options. So it's going to connect to our data source and get back some additional information. So here we'll see that we've got a slightly shorter response back from our large language model. And we'll also notice that inside of here, we've got things like Doc2 citations. See Doc1 and Doc2. It's giving us a link to a travel website, which is our company's travel website. And it's giving us some specific things, about the River Thames that's there, a particular hotel that we recommend, and things like that. So these citations that we're getting, well, obviously that's not particularly useful. What does Doc2 mean in the context of this chunk of text? It doesn't mean anything. But what we can ask is that completion. Well, let's unpack some additional message context from there. In this case, from the completion that we got back, so that was the response value, our chat completion from the complete chat request. We can ask it using the Azure SDK. I want to ask it for the Azure message context. Again, this is a preview feature, so I'm just disabling that warning. And from this Azure message context, we can inspect through it and look at some additional stuff that is provided about the RAG side of it. So any intents that it determined from the request that went up. And in particular, we want to have a look for citations. So we're going to iterate through citations and then output those. Let's kick a run from that. So because I'm just outputting the content of the citation, but you can, from the citation object, there's a whole bunch of different properties that we can get. I should have brought those up before we looked at it. So the chunk, so this is referencing that doc point in time, the path to that file. So if we wanted people to be able to download the appropriate PDF that we've uploaded, we can give that. The title of the PDF, a URL where they maybe can get that from instead if it was like a website we've indexed versus a document, and obviously the textual content. So here we are. Here are the different bits of information that were found from our documents that we uploaded that are relevant to London. And then we can see here the various hotels. So the Buckingham Hotel that it referenced, near Buckingham Palace, City Hotel, Kensington Hotel, and there is our website, and ultimately additional information such as the URL of the blob that was there that we can go and have a look at. Whoops! And I realized that I've scrolled like way past where I thought I was. There we are. So that all of that information, like I said, it's been extracted from the PDF that had, and I just realized I accidentally scrolled much further down here than I meant before showing the results, because there is the intent. tell me information about London, facts about London. So these are the things that it was attempting to find with inside of our large language model, the problems that it was trying to solve for us. And then these citations are the things that it was using to complete that out. And that's how we're able to get back relevant information, such as particular document points, particular hotels that we recommend as our organization, so on and so forth. But how easy was that? Like we really only added a couple of lines of code and uploaded some PDFs to a search indexer. And all of a sudden, we've gone from some very generic response about a city and location there, no references really to a particular hotel you might want to stay at or anything like that, to being very contextualized to our organization, to things that we can provide through our services as a company. So like I said, pretty easy to get up and running, isn't it, Justin?
That's correct. So I'm really surprised that actually within the Azure OpenAI service, and we can analyze when we send the very simple the prompt, and it automatically provides some sort of intent and what kind of the analysis within the document. And based on that, it returns the structured response. It's really good.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, this allows us to avoid that complexity of retraining a model, and we can then always re-upload PDFs. We can add more PDFs about, or more like supplementary documents about the locations that we're supporting. As we expand into other cities, we can just add that into a search index, and it's just knowledge that is immediately becoming available through the calls that are happening within inside of our module.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the next things that people should do if they want to learn a bit more about this through our Learn module?
So we have so let me share my screen. So this is the entire Learn module of our Microsoft .NET Focus on AI. The first one is the AI OpenAI service, and we are on here. And finally, we have one more session left, which is responsible AI. So that means we are going to use this AI model with more care. So that will be covered by next session.
Exactly, yeah, and that's a really important one. Anyone that's looking to use these AI tools within inside of applications they're building, definitely join in for the responsible AI session, or catch the recording if it's not in a appropriate time zone for yourselves, because that's a really critical part about building AI systems.
That's right. So when you go back to the last slide, we have so yeah, let's get back. Let's go to the last slide. Then yeah, this is the one. That's the most important thing, I think, for you to for everyone to get involved. The first one is if you are missing any of our past live streaming, then that's the right place to go. And this is the second one is our challenge, and the last one is the most important part. So if you are really confident, what I have learned, and I want to take my assessment, then that's the one, and you will get a digital badge, and you can like brag what your achievement to your social media.
Sounds good. Well, if there are any questions, feel free to drop them into the chat for us. But ultimately that covers off everything that we were looking to go through today. The Learn module that we have there as part of today's session, you can go through that, and you can spin up a lab environment where you can actually play around with this with Azure OpenAI service. If you've got an Azure account that has OpenAI service available within it, you can spin up a lab environment that will set up the code base and provide you with all the documents and everything that you want. You can also do that without the lab environment. The Learn module does have the links to this if you want to do that self-paced outside of our environment, or you want to use your own machine, or whatever the case may be. But we do have essentially with what we've had here in these Polyglot notebooks running with inside of a console application, so you can play around with them. The PDFs that we used with Azure AI Search They're available to download and upload to your own instances and things like that. And I do see that we do have a question that's just come in on the chat there. So there's a question about the best practices for using identity and access management. So IAM with Azure OpenAI resources. Our recommendation is to use managed identities wherever possible to work with these resources. With the services that we connected to today, obviously we went down the part of using a key-based authentication, but that was just for simplicity's sake, without having to go through the process of setting up managed identity inside of this kind of time constraint session. But you can definitely do this with managed identity. In fact, that's normally how we have these demos. And if you check out some of our more complex sample applications, they'll be using managed identity. If you don't want to, or for whatever reason can't use managed identities to do access control with inside of your Azure environment to resources, I would recommend using Azure Key Vault to store the credentials for your services that you're connecting to. So the key, the value, the API key, the endpoint value, and possibly even the model deployment name. Using those with inside of Key Vault, then Key Vault can be consumed by apps deployed to Azure very easily, whether it's directly through the Key Vault connections you can have in like app service or things like that, or by bringing it into the .NET configuration pipeline. But yeah, like managed identity would always be my first point of call. But if for whatever reason I need to fall back, it would be making sure I'm using Key Vault as the storage model for that kind of stuff.
Yep. That's really good. I think that's it from us.
Yep. Sounds good. Well, everyone, thanks for joining us this morning, this evening, or this afternoon, whatever it is for you. We look forward to seeing you on the next one of these episodes in 2-ish days' time. Again, depends what time zone you're in to exactly how that close that is to 2 days. But yeah, thanks for joining us. Thank you, Justin, for joining me today.
Thanks, Aaron. So thanks for watching.
Bye, everyone.